Hello, lovely Slumber Party listeners. It's your host, Tim Murray, and you're listening to the podcast where I interview drag queens, Broadway performers, and comedians about their slumber party experiences growing up. And today, we have such a very, very special episode for you. Something that has brought me unbelievable amounts of theater nerddom and full joy in this pandemic. I have the hosts of the Out for Blood podcast, a deep dive into, that's right, Carrie the Musical. I know you've never heard me mention Carrie the Musical on this podcast. Please welcome to the stage Holly Morgan and Chris Adams.
Hi! Hi!
You can literally feel the palpable difference of London to LA because I'm like, good morning. And you guys are like, hi!
Party time.
Hi,
Party
everybody.
time.
We're
So
so
it's
ready.
it's like a 7 p.m. there, right?
Yeah. Just like yeah.
Oh my God. How are your
Wine
days?
time.
It's wine time.
Wine
What are you
time.
drinking?
Cheers.
Cheers,
Wow.
everybody.
I should have poured it into the mug.
Pour
What's
it
wrong with me?
in. Go
Sorry,
for it.
I've got a lovely Pinot Grigio here. Cheers.
Very nice. Fresh and fruity.
Ooh.
I love it.
And
Just
Holly,
like
you're
me.
drinking just like you. Holly, you're drinking a Côte d'Aron, you said?
A Coteron. I mean, do you know what? I
Oh.
oversold it. I think it's quite tinny, but what can you expect from when you're drinking it out of a mug? This is
That's
where we're at.
right.
This stage
I
of the
have to-
pandemic.
I have to tell you, I worked at a wine bar in New York City for about
Did you?
5 years, and I did not ever know what a Côte d'Aron was. But honey, I sure did sell the hell out of it. I would be like, oh yeah, it's got I would say contradictory things all the time. I'd be like, yeah, it's really dry and really sweet. And they'd be like, wait, those are the opposite of each other. And I'd be like, that's what makes it so special.
Oh my
It's-
God, the contradictions.
Yeah.
No chocolate and
I just have this conspiracy theory that just wine is like nonsense. It's all this. I think it's all the same. You could give me any wine and tell me it was like £100 bottle of wine, and I'd be
100.
like, delicious.
There
And
are
it could-
3 tastes. There is white wine, red wine, in between wine. That is wine.
That
from
is
a mug.
true. That is pretty true. And in LA, has orange wine become a thing with you guys over there?
Skin contact.
Oh, skin
What?
contact.
Yeah.
The only skin contact we're having in 2020 and 2021
Get
is
it when
orange
you can.
wine. Yeah.
This is like Moira Rose style fruit wine.
It is, exactly, yeah.
I'm in.
It's just Tropicana rebranded. But...
How badly did you want to try fruit wine after seeing that episode?
Oh, desperately.
Imagine. I wanted to invest. He was a great salesperson.
She should work for Arbonne.
She should work for Arbonne. I think there was like an Arbonne Schitt's Creek episode. It wasn't Arbonne, but it was pretty much Arbonne.
Yeah, a pyramid selling thing, yeah.
Wait, what is that? What is Arbonne?
Arbonne is a skincare brand, which for some reason, like a lot of performers in the UK end up being reps for. And it's a fucking pyramid scheme. And they're like, it's not a pyramid scheme, it's just a triangular shaped business model. And you're like,
That's perfect for actors,
I'm
though,
going to be done
because
so dirty.
in a lot of ways, the theater is a pyramid scheme. Like,
Yeah, it's true. I hope you went. I hope you didn't have any like Arbonne sponsorship lined up.
Oh my God, yeah.
they're actually on the call
Sorry,
right
Arbonne.
now, and they're waving
Yeah,
the red
cut
flag. They're like, we're gonna have to cut this whole thing. We were gonna sponsor this whole entire
Cut
thing.
this out.
Yeah, cut
Yeah, put this bit on the Patreon. They won't see it.
That'd be fine with it.
Oh, exactly. There you go. I love things like that. I'm obsessed with scams. I think
Oh my God, me
scams are
too.
like the most exciting. Any documentary about a scam, like the Fire Festival documentaries, or that Elizabeth Holmes, the woman who was like, did you watch that one?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh my God. I got so upset watching the Fire Festival documentary, like halfway through I had to stop it. And I was like, my husband was like, why are you upset? I was like, because I'll never get to watch it for the first time again. Like, this moment is finite and it's slipping from my grasp.
Did you guys watch the Class Action Park It was incredible.
That
Holly,
the
you have to
other
watch it.
one. I need to see this.
It's not the Fire Festival one. It's about this theme park, this kind of water park somewhere, and it, like, if you went there, you would come out with an injury because it was so dangerous. There were like nails and spikes coming out of the slides, and it was incredible. Watch it; it's so good.
It represents 1980s
1980s
America, 1980s straight America in a way that is like so specific and so real. Just like dudes being absolute buttholes, like just acting like jackasses, throwing themselves down these slides. It's really, really crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my god, like toxic masculinity, the theme park.
Truly.
Yeah. But like the British equivalent to that is every year, and sadly not obviously last year, but every Christmas there is this kind of scam that happens where some like dodgy guys just set up, they usually call it like Winter Wonderland World, or it's called like New Lapland Experience, and it's basically this like shit Christmas experience, which is just this muddy field with like a sad reindeer, like emaciated reindeer in the corner.
But it's like a dog with like antlers.
Yeah,
on.
a dog, and like a couple of teenagers like smoking in the corner dressed as elves, and like you drive through and it takes 10 seconds, and it happens every year, and people pay like hundreds of pounds for it, and it's my favorite thing. Because
it's the best.
People are just,
that should be a movie. That sounds wild.
It should be a movie. It really should.
Or a podcast.
A deep dive into that. Speaking of Christmas time in the UK, I was in London a couple years ago and was with a British cast. We don't understand. So can you describe panto for the American theater listeners?
100%. It is a noble art form based around essentially the artistic principle of tinsel. If you take tinsel and you make it a living art form, you get pantomime. How do you describe it? It's
like fairy tales?
Yeah, loosely based around fairy tales or some kind of like mythic event. and then you round up like everyone who had a hit in the 90s or a sex scandal in the 90s or used to be on a soap, and then you're like, so you're playing the princess, and then you fire them out to the regions and people will come, and it's brilliant.
It's amazing.
It's like high camp? It's like really
high camp.
Oh, okay. It's like heightened.
But like old.
Yeah.
Like, it's like hundreds of years old. Well, 100 years old, and
it's old.
Yeah, and really long. They're always like 3 hours long, and it's just chaos and carnage.
And really like, rude. Loads of knob jokes.
Yeah, pop songs. I'm like, so you should look at. Do you know? Are you aware of Rob Madge, who Holly spoke to on her other podcast?
Oh, they're the best. They're the best. Like so Rob does an amazing kind of pop songs in panto video.
Yeah.
Check out Rob's video. It's brilliant.
It's great.
Ooh, that sounds great. Yeah, I need to check it out. When I was doing a show over there, I was one of only 2 Americans, and everybody else was British. And so we were doing a parody musical, and so they would constantly be like, "Oh, so this part's like panto," and I'd be like, "Yeah, absolutely." I fully get to know what we're doing, but could someone actually explain this differently to me?
Did no one take the time to tell you what it was?
Well, no one took the time, but also I did try to pretend like I just knew what was happening. So it was like
it's a very British thing, isn't it? Like there's also this trend for like mega pantos that has come in with like mega, like I think Pamela Anderson did one, and like if you imagine like going to your local like tiny theater and seeing Pamela Anderson dressed as Peter Pan flying over the audience singing like One Direction song. That's
insane.
Like, it's just crazy.
That sounds like my dream come true. I'm obsessed with Pamela Anderson. I watched Baywatch so much, and what I love about the theater world is like I'm sure you guys experienced this in London too, but like when I was living in New York, you find shit out, or you see these people like in your audition spaces. She was at Pearl Studios, which is like a famous theater audition place in New York City, rehearsing for Chicago the Musical. And a bunch of my friends were like at an audition in the room next door that day, and they said they could like hear her rehearsing, and nobody, I think when my friend Trey Gerald told me this happened, nobody knows what happened, but she never went on in the role.
Oh, wow.
You made this brilliant point on your last podcast with Ginger Binge actually about the stunt casting of Chicago, and it's something that like Chris and I have always like we find this so funny.
Yeah.
I'm just obsessed with the people they will rag in and be like, "You're playing Roxy now," like basically anyone. But Pam Anderson that's good casting. I assume she was Roxy.
I think she was Roxy, but I guess maybe she just really couldn't sing it. It never happened. Pretty sure she never performed. But isn't that wild? I mean, it's so weird because it's one of those shows where like, you know, I feel like for people our age, we're like, well, that show's always been around. But like, I just listened to Michael Riedel's book about theater in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the way that show came back in the 90s is so fascinating. Like, they did this one-off concert and it was a huge hit, and they thought everyone was going to want it, and then none of the producers wanted it because they were like, it's just a concert. And now it's this like huge cash cow where they can just bring in. But when I saw it with Brandy, I'm not kidding, it was one of the best theater experiences I've ever had. She was she was giving 110%, and there's just something so desperate about Roxy, and that's why it works to cast these actresses that are, you know, were very famous 10 years ago. Yeah. Or 20 years ago sometimes. And Wendy Williams played I almost said Mama Rose. Mama Morton.
Oh my God.
She played Mama Morton, and there's if you can ever watch, if we were at a summer party, this is the YouTube video I would show you guys. There is a YouTube video of her saying on her show that she was going to go into Chicago, and Amy Spanger, legendary Broadway actress, she was in like Kiss Me Kate, Tick Tick Boom, you know, if you pull up so many Broadway musical theater albums, Amy Spanger is on them. She comes out and I forget who the other woman is, but they both come out doing the Hot Honey Rag, and then Amy Spanger goes, Wendy Williams is joining the cast of Chicago on Broadway for 7 months, and Wendy goes, 7 weeks.
Too long.
The panic in her face is like so. She's like, no, I'm not. And they just kept. I think it was like live or something, because they just kept it. It kept it in. Amy Spinger's like, whoops.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
And then great. Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna. Sorry, it came into my head. There's a great video of Mel B in Chicago. I'm sure you must have seen it on Broadway, and she just breaks character and just starts singing Spice Girls songs, and everyone's like, the rest of the cast are like,
oh my God. Didn't Mel B do a Mimi as well in Rent?
Yeah,
she did. She sure did.
Yeah, she can turn her hand to anything.
When the Spanish babies cry.
There was a big debate about that, Chris. I remember it was like on, on all the blogs, and people in my world were like posting about it on their their private social media, being like, some people were like, this was great, and then the other half of people were like, this was fucked up. Like, how could she do that? I'm of the camp that I think is kind of great. It was like, it's like, whatever. I mean, this show has been running for 15 years or something. Like, why not get, and like, that's what's the difference between a theater and a movie. Like, she gave that audience a very special, singular performance. Like, the idea that this show is like so precious and frozen and like shouldn't be tampered with when you have Wendy Williams in it sometimes is like, come on, let Mel B have some fun is how I felt about it.
I mean, what we are describing is basically panto casting. They're using the panto casting strategy. Maybe not quite as high as like Mel B and Brandy, but you just get, Mel B would be playing, the Wicked Witch of the West, and she would sing a bit of Wannabe. Yeah, she'd be great. She'd fly in, she'd fly off, she'd throw some sweets at the crowd. Everyone would have a great time.
The sweet throwing is quite alarming if you don't know it's coming.
Yeah,
it's quite aggressive.
I think it might be banned because of like health and safety regulations nowadays. But they used to just like throw sweets, and like you'd be like, ugh. It was great.
Oh
Oh my
my
god! And there'd
God.
always be a scene in UV
Mm.
because like every like local council funds the panto, so they'd like pay for this UV technology, which is essentially like a black light. So and it looks like any kind of gay bar essentially, and then they'd be like, "Oh, we're mermaids," and you'd be like, I thought we were doing Aladdin. Why are we under the sea? It was so mad.
And it would always be sponsored. Sorry, this is not what we're here to talk about. But
No,
like,
sorry.
it would always be sponsored by either like a supermarket or some local firm. So it would be like, "Oh, Peter, we must go to Bob's Building Company to pick up some bricks and cement." And like a representative from Bob's would come on with like some prizes to give to the kids. And I'd be like, "Oh, thanks for coming to Bob's Building Supplies. Here's your," just like bizarre. Like, how? Yeah,
Tim,
you must
love
come.
it.
You must come over.
I think I would love this like too much. Like, I would get too. Speaking of loving something too much, what made you nerds get so deep into Carrie the Musical? Where did it start? Holly, we'll start with you.
Oh my god, that segue was everything.
That's why they don't pay me the big bucks.
Yes. How did we get into it? So basically, like Chris and I became friends at uni, and I was in my final year, and Chris was directing Bat Boy at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah.
And I gave my Shelley.
Oh my God. I remember you guys talking about this now on the pod, and we have to deep dive into Edinburgh Fringe after this. Keep going.
Oh my god, yeah. We became best friends, and essentially we literally spent every day together. When in theory Chris should have been in work and I should have been doing some academic work, which fuck that. And then because we bonded over musical theatre, and then Chris was like, "I found this insane thing. Come round, let's put this on my CD player and let's listen to it." And then we listened to it on the CD player and became obsessed. And I shall hand over to you, I guess, Chris.
And with further research, we discovered that so the thing was Carrie the Musical, which was this kind of like perfect like middle ground.
The thing was wicked.
Just explain. Have you heard of it? Do you guys have it over there? But,
that'd be a great panto.
Yeah. Oh, Defying Gravity is
a panto.
Yeah. Anyway, so then further research revealed we could get a VHS tape with a bootleg recording of Carrie the Musical from eBay or something. So we did, and it arrived in the post, in the mail, and it had stamps on it and like olden day. And we watched it, and we were like, this is insane. Like, because the show is, you've talked about it in great detail, but the show is just, it's not the show you expect you're going to see when you think you're going to watch Carrie the Musical. And it was this grainy kind of copy of a copy of a copy. And then at the end, it stopped. And at the end, we were like, oh my God, that was so weird. And then it kept playing. And there was this weird, someone had like stitched this weird footage to the end of the cast backstage on their closing day that someone had filmed on a camcorder. And they were like, oh, we shouldn't be closing, the show's so good. And like, it was just shots of them in restaurants and we were like, what have we found? And I think we assumed we were the first people in the world to discover this thing. And we certainly were not, it turns out. But anyway, we kind of got obsessed with it and just kind of sung it at each other for a few years. 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years.
And then last year, obviously with not much to do in the middle of a pandemic, we decided now would be the time to to investigate the show and kind of work out what the hell it was and kind of speak to the people who were there. And we were so lucky because, it's terrible. Theatre is not on at the moment and lots of people are out of work, but I don't think we would have been able to make this show at any other time because just everyone involved in the show was desperate to talk about their kind of theatre careers and their lives in show business. And it was amazing. And suddenly we had a podcast about it.
That's incredible. And truly, listeners, you must listen to this podcast. Even if you've never heard of Carrie the Musical, I promise it's it's like we were talking about. If you enjoy Action Park, if you enjoy Fire Festival,
Yeah.
like there is an element to what went down in the late 80s with this show that is so unbelievably fascinating. And you guys do a fabulous job of.
Oh, thank you.
You really do. I mean, it feels like I look forward to it every week like I would a great documentary coming out where I'm like, I can't wait to watch this. It's so, I mean, you're giving such great information. The guests that you're getting on there are giving such great deep dives. And I think what you said about Bat Boy is so fun. I love that you were doing Bat Boy because I discovered Carrie the Musical when I was a freshman in college. I was like still closeted and like trying to present a certain way. And my roommate was a sophomore who was like a full, like truly maybe the most musical theater nerd I have ever met. His name is Zach Orts. Hello, Zach. And
Hey, Zach.
he was like a true, like he was an accompanist and he had every bootleg and every score you could ever imagine. But we went to the University of Miami, which was like a huge football school. And like, you know, I wasn't really in the theater program yet as a freshman. So I was like I was like really straddling these two worlds. I was, you know, I was Margaret and Carrie publicly out in the field. And then in my dorm room, I was the teens, you know, loving this amazing thing. And he would like tell me all the he had the book, so he showed me the book and I just was like, I need to know more about this. And I think and then through his like showing me all these obscure musicals, I would watch the bootlegs and then I would like listen to Bat Boy while I did my like sociology homework and just like take in. He introduced me to so much stuff. And I think a big reason why people love Carrie, and it sounds like this was your experience. Tell me if I'm mapping this onto you or not. It feels to so many of us like it is something we have ownership over. It's like our own little thing because, I mean, you're right. Other people did know about it, but it isn't Phantom of the Opera. It isn't Wicked.
Yeah.
Like when you discover it, you're like, oh, I really found something here that, you know, no one is going to. And my favorite thing to do on this podcast is talk about slumber party stuff that we didn't get to share with other people. Carrie the Musical is a great example of like something some little queer kid in Nebraska loves and doesn't have anybody at his school to talk to about it.
Yes, that's so true.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like I think when we released this, we thought there'd be like 6 people who would listen to it, probably just us basically. And then all of a sudden, like thousands of people just came out of the woodwork about how the show kind of changed their lives for the reasons that you talk about, Tim. Like I think that, like, a bit of a spoiler, but the conclusion that we kind of come to, the reason that the show survived and kind of lived on is because you know, all of its fans are basically Carrie. You know, they're the underdog. They're the person who had to kind of like fight to get through school and you know, you just want her to succeed and you kind of want it to work out for her. And I think that's kind of why so many people like us all got into the show and how it kind of stayed alive. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And it's so lovely to like, I think it's something very analog about this show as well. It's whoever your roommate was who introduced you to it. And it's like Chris and my relationship. And there are so many other people all over the world who we're connecting with in an amazing digital way and going, oh my God, we're all the same. We all just had someone pass us a CD or a VHS and we watched it. And I mean, you know, I don't want to take it away from however Gen X experienced things, which I'm sure is wonderful. But like how we found stuff was literally like, these are things I hold in my hands and no one else has them. And I just want to talk to other people about them. And they're precious. They're like precious things we find.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like our garage sale or like our it's so fun and so cool. And I love what you said about everyone being a Carrie, Chris, but unfortunately I'm a Chris.
Okay, I see.
I'm more of a Chris, but no, but you're right. She's giving off those vibes, those Chris vibes.
Yeah.
But you're right.
I can see that your red leather catsuit just off screen
there it is.
Oh my God. I mean, Charlotte Dambois, like what a fucking godsend. Like that. Iconic. it's just really so good. But you're right. You are right. I think so many of us relate to Carrie, and I think because the book was hugely popular, and then the movie was an absolute smash hit, and there's something really interesting about something being so ahead of its time, because I remember my first thought when my roommate said there's this book called Not Since Carrie and it's all about the biggest flop in Broadway history. They made a musical of Carrie, and he started laughing and I started laughing, thinking like, what do I know about musicals? Oh, right, like Oklahoma, whatever, Guys and Dolls. Like nothing in your head thinks that a horror musical could work. And then of course there's Sweeney Todd, which totally does work. And I think that also is what makes it so special, is it is so unique. They were really, it's fascinating that they were like, this is going to be the next Les Mis, like this is going to be the next, Phantom of the Opera, when it felt like very few people were saying like, well, do people want to go to a theater and be scared while listening to musical theater? And I think people do. But similarly to Chicago, like Chicago the first time around wasn't like the massive hit that it is now. People weren't ready to like go see songs about murder. But now our generation really has like changed so much of the kind of things that we want to see.
That's so true.
I think it kind of the original Carrie also kind of didn't meet its brief, and that is why I think people were so confused, because it's not a horror musical. It's like this camp, kitschy thing that meets almost like a kind of weird domestic abuse opera. Like it's not really a horror kind of gory musical in the way that it was sort of billed. So I think that was another kind of ingredient in this pot that made people just confused and surprised when they went to see it, because it was just this, it was just undescribable, really.
It's such a good point, actually.
Sorry, ahead, Holly.
No, you go, baby.
No, you go.
I just say it's like that is like, I think Debbie Allen again made that comparison with Sweeney Todd. She was like, well, they had Sweeney Todd, so we can do this. And you're like, Sweeney Todd has moments of light relief. It has By the Sea, and it has like a vein of humor that runs through it that's very integral. Like Little Priest isn't like, oh god, they're making jokes. It's like, of course they're making jokes, and of course they're dark, whereas Carrie is just two different things. And it's the two different things, when they rub up against each other, is when we get the like
why do you think it is two different things? Because the movie doesn't really feel like that. It kind of feels like the same. What do you think it is about musicalizing it? Because I think the 2012 off-Broadway version did an excellent job, and I was truly obsessed with it. But it's still, every musical incarnation of it, do you think it's the music, or like what, or the way that we try to put teenagers on stage?
I think like the movie's interesting because it is a horror film, but it also kind of embraces its campness. There's some very camp scenes in that film, with the girls when they're in detention, there's that kind of camp music as they're all doing their press ups, and the characters are all very kind of exaggerated, but you're right, somehow it all kind of mashes together well, whereas on stage, like Holly said, it's like someone was trying to create Fame or Grease, and someone else was trying to create this kind of high opera thing, and the two just don't work together. And it's like no one talked to each other about how the show should look and feel across the divide, and somehow this just didn't get fixed at any point. And they had this window of opportunity between it closing in the UK and opening on Broadway, and no one did anything apart. The Margaret White was recast because Barbara had left due to various things in Stratford. But I think there's so many possible reasons why it just didn't work. And like you say, I think the revival probably leaned into more of the kind of psychological horror rather than the campness. And it became a different show for it. A very good show, but very different to, its predecessor.
I think there is something inherently, and I'm going to get my feminist comedian hat on here, but like I had a lovely chat with Alice Ripley about this, like clang name drop. We've got Alice Ripley later in the series, about how, oh my god, I couldn't believe she was actually speaking to us. She's it's amazing. But how integral the femininity of this concept is, and how I think in the 80s that felt really radical. The idea of putting this show about being a woman and coming into your power, and how that felt laughable. Whereas in 2012, that felt
interesting,
something I can see on stage.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's really good. That's really fascinating. And like even, I mean, in the 70s, I guess that was like coming off of like the women's liberation movement. But then the 80s was like the Reagan era, was like this like
exactly.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it's so weird how timing can really change an audience's, you know, the way they appreciate something or don't appreciate something.
Absolutely. And you think of like the mega musicals, all of those dynamics are very kind of Madonna hoary. Like you look at Les Mis and it's just like you've got a Fontaine, you've got an Eponine, and they don't have much character development. They just come on and sing a song, and then, well, Eponine has a bit more, doesn't she? But like it's not as involved as the journey that Carrie goes through. And not to say that it was as evolved in 1988 as it is in 2012, but maybe that theatrical landscape wasn't there to accommodate that in the way that it is now.
That's so fascinating. That's really, really interesting. And I think there's definitely like so many feminist elements to that story. And there's something weirdly, and I can't put my finger on it, but there's something very queer about Carrie, period. I mean, obviously, Chris, what you said about her being the outcast, I think is very clear. And I think there's something that you could map onto her having these powers that will protect her, is like, you know, the queer person having a biting tongue of don't mess with me because I will eviscerate you with my insults, is kind of like the underdog getting her revenge toward the end. And I wonder if people were ready to see something so feminist and so gay. I mean, even the costumes were so gay. Like everything about it was like so edgy and different.
It's really interesting that all of the kind of major productions of the show have been directed by men as well. Like we talk about, you know, what would a female created Carrie look like? You know, obviously Debbie choreographed the original, and the revival had a female musical director, but the directors have all been male, and the writers of the show were 3 men. It's based on a novel by a man. Like, what would happen if you kind of took this story and gave it back to women? How would it change? You know, it's really, there's so many layers to it that you could talk about it for, you know, a 10-part podcast.
Yeah, I would be very interested to see a queer woman of color like at the helm of directing that show. And I'd be really interested to see a queer woman of color with a background in comedy and like high camp taking the helm of that show. They did a production in downtown LA a few years ago that was immersive. You know about this?
We have this coming up.
Okay. We won't delve too deep.
No, go for it.
No.
But I'm just very fascinated in that. And back to the conversation about teens on stage, I think is really important, because I think it's really hard to do. And it's like, honestly, very rarely successful. People in their early 20s on stage is usually an absolute slay. Like you think like Rent. But I mean, when you try, there's something always really removed about these creators, these often older men trying to create, like there was, I won't name the musical, but there was a Broadway musical several years ago where I literally felt like the entire time I was watching it, the punchlines were like, well, because, you know, we're here on our Facebooks. And then we're going to bring, oh, what are you doing? Are you tweeting? The whole vibe was like, we know what Twitter is. I think it's really hard to write for the next generation when you're not in that generation.
Absolutely.
We spoke to Stafford Arima, who directed the revival, and something he basically said that, you know, when they were reworking the show in 2012 for this, they wanted to modernize it and make it contemporary, but they were talking about that. They were like, we can't have them come out and say, oh my God, I'm putting this on my Instagram, because if you perform that show now, it already sounds, you know, you should be talking about TikTok or whatever else the youth are using. So they had this real challenge of kind of keeping it timeless, but also making it look, you know, it helped that they weren't wearing togas and like red bikinis and stuff. So that was a step. That was a step ahead. But when you listen, you know, I was listening to some rehearsal footage today, because that's the kind of thing I do, because I have no life. And some of their lines, like, there's a scene where Carrie walks into the prom for the first time, and the boys are like, oh my God, what a fox, and things like that. And it's like, nobody spoke like that in 1988. And like, someone sings wham and bam and thank you ma'am, and it's like, this is out of Greece or something.
Like,
who says this stuff?
When he asked her to the prom, she's like, oh, hey daddy-o. Yeah, I love
that. It's like that. Yeah.
Hey,
what a fox. I was like, what a fox. What a fox.
Chris and Holly,
what's dressed?
Oh my God. What do you think would be the ideal version of Carrie the Musical? Do you think it's like an off-Broadway, off-West End? Do you think it's West End? Do you think it's a movie musical? Do you think what would you do to make it in today's world a hit?
Oh my God.
Hardball question, I know.
Hard question.
Incredibly hard.
Yeah. So
it's okay if you don't have an answer.
No, we do.
I think like the two Carries are, like, in my mind, they're two different shows. So if I could go back to May 88 and see that show, I would go in a heartbeat, and I would give them all my money, and I'd sit there and watch it, all 21 performances, one after the other, because you know, it's its own thing. But also we went to New York and we watched the revival and loved that too, but it felt very different. And we've seen, you know, the production here in London at the Southwark Playhouse, which is a tiny little studio theatre, was brilliant. It was like watching the show for the first time, like a tiny little production of it. And equally, I wish we'd seen that immersive production in California, because that sounds epic too. So like, I can't pin down what I think I want this to look like.
I just want to watch many of them, all of them, multitude of Carries for the rest of my life. Like, I think the orchestration of the new one that Anne-Marie Milazzo carried out is so amazing, and we've been lucky enough, she's shared some of the demos of when she was originally working on it, and you listen to how she was working. She's the woman is a savant. She's like Prince. Like, she's multi-layering her vocals and coming out with this incredible like soundscape of teenage horror, which is incredible. And like, I want to see that. I want to see that close. I want to see it in a grotty, dingy space. But I also want to see fucking Charlotte Zambois in 1988, like high kicking all over the place. I want it all. So it's Sophie's choice.
Yeah.
I think you really both touched on something very interesting, which is that like, maybe it's that it is so imperfect is what makes it so great, is like why we love it. And it's, and why, we want all the versions. Like, that's what, musical theater in its essence is imperfect. You're never going to see, you know, whatever, if someone claims that a night of theater was perfect, it's never going to happen that way again. You know, it's never going to be Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth in that show when you go see it. If you thought like that was the ideal version, or if you thought Shoshana was the ideal version, like, because you know, even a show like that's a massive hit that has been repurposed several times in several different languages across the world. And I guess Carrie is similar to that in that way. It's all imperfect, and we all have so many opinions on what could make it great or make it better. But what's fun about it is like, just seeing the many different takes on it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there are fans who have tried to like make their own perfect version of the script by like meshing together bits from the 80s and bits from now. And like you say, it's one of those shows that could just forever be adapted and changed. And that's kind of, you know, it's a flawed show because it's a flawed story. Like it's a stupid story, right? She can move things with her mind and she destroys her entire town at the end. So it's you know, it's never going to be, you know, mainstream stuff. But yeah, I guess there is no perfect version. There's a great video on YouTube, actually. Maybe this should be my video, but somebody took the Debbie Allen choreography of In, which is the first number of the show, and recreated it exactly, but with 80s kind of aerobic gear and 80s hair instead of the weird like Grecian stuff that they used in the show. And it's brilliant because the choreography is technically awesome. Like it's on point, but
unbelievable.
Yeah. So when you put it into that weird set that they created and dress them in togas, it doesn't work right. But when this brilliant choreographer had obviously this brilliant dancer or someone had taken it and set it in the era that it's supposed to be and made it look, you know, like Fame basically, it was great. And I always wonder what that show would look like in a kind of period 80s setting, because, you know, maybe it would completely change how it did. Maybe it would have just, you know, run for 6 months and disappeared forever and no one would be talking about it anymore.
Yeah,
if it didn't have the epic costume situation. Okay, so that's a great answer for what video you would show me at a slumber party. Holly, what's your YouTube video that you'd want to watch with us at a slumber party?
Oh my god. Well, I was assuming that Chris would cover.
I know.
Well, we did discuss this. We did confer, and Courtney, Take Your Break is always our go-to. we're obsessed.
The compilation one.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I like a lot of aggression with my Courtney, Take Your Break. I like the attack of it. And I like the clientele to really fall off a cliff. That's my
and that wavy thing they do as well.
Yeah, the wavy choreography to cover the L reveal is integral. Yeah, you need that. I like an invisible dog as well. Like that would be probably my first choice if Chris hadn't played it. But my second choice would be David's Dead. Do you know David's Dead?
David's
I don't think so.
Oh, this is nichely British.
This is really British.
I can't wait.
Oh my god, Tim, I think you're gonna love it. Okay, so so when David Bowie died, his ex-wife Angie Bowie was in Celebrity Big Brother, and it was a real perfect storm because the people who were in that season included basically the great and the Z list, as any Celebrity Big Brother would. So we've got like Darren Day, who's a sort of light entertainment star, John Partridge, who is like a particularly chaotic rum-tum tugger, and that takes some saying, you know. In a pre-Derulo world, he was a really chaotic rum-tum tugger. We had, who else is in there? David Guest, this is the integral one, David Guest of Liza's ex-husband, and Angie Bowie, who was married to David Bowie, and Tiffany New York Pollard. So the producers take Angie Bowie aside. They're like, I'm really sorry, your ex-husband David Bowie has died. Can you keep it to yourself? Which is a set of choices, which is like, don't put this on this woman and then tell her not to tell anybody. Like, it's not fair.
Yeah.
But the poor grieving woman obviously is like shell-shocked. Her ex-husband's dead. And the first person she runs into is Tiffany New York Pollard. So she tells Tiffany that David's dead, but she doesn't say David Bowie's dead. She says, David's dead. And she thinks she means David Guest, who, in the perfect storm of this clip, is poorly and is having a lie down. Tiffany's reaction is to start screaming blue murder, running around the house, like absolutely losing her shit. She runs into where David Guest is having a lie down after she's been like tearing at Angie Bowie, like, you're lying, no, he's not dead. She goes into where David Guest is lying down, coincidentally with a kind of shroud over his head that makes it look like he's in a body bag, and she kind of rips it off him and he's just having a nap. And then she's like, you lied to me, you told me David was dead. John Partridge has to come out and explain to her not knowing that David Bowie's dead as well. Daniela Westbrook is there, who is famous in the UK for essentially eroding her septum from cocaine misuse. And you have 7 to 8 minutes of pure joy, which ends unfortunately with Angie Bowie being berated by 10 like Z-list celebrities for having lied to Tiffany New York Pollard. And you're like, this woman is grieving. Shall we leave off? But yeah, that would be my choice. David's dead.
That is so good and so wild. I have seen, I think, clips on Twitter of Tiffany Pollard just screaming.
Oh yeah,
I think I've seen some of that, but that is a perfect chaotic storm of
so mad. She had
mess.
merch. Tiffany released David's dead merch, which she had to withdraw when David Guest died 3 months later.
No, he really did.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is wow. That story just keeps getting more emotional.
There you go. That's the gift that keeps on giving.
It's kind of like a panto. You just described it as a panto. Like
very panto.
Yeah. You'd get that group of people would be in, like Aladdin in Birmingham or something in panto.
100%.
Oh my God.
Liza's ex-husband.
Oh my God. What were your slumber parties like growing up?
You know what? I was feeling guilty because I just didn't really have. I know that's the whole point of this podcast, and I shouldn't be here.
No, a lot of people don't have any, which I think is fascinating in itself.
Yeah.
So keep going.
Well, I was just until I listened to your last episode with Ginger, and she said she didn't have them either. So I was like, okay, well, if Ginger can get away with that, I can come on the show. But I don't think I really did. I remember I probably stayed over with friends, but I don't remember them. They weren't very eventful. Probably my first ones were probably staying at Holly Morgan's house when I was like 21. When we were in Edinburgh, we all stayed in an apartment together. So that was probably my first official slumber party where we stayed up drinking wine and talking about Carrie the Musical.
The Carrie the Musical, yes. Oh God!
When you would stay up with Holly in Edinburgh, I think adult slumber parties are some of the most fun. I think that's like the stuff we're gonna think about when we die. That's what I always imagine is like when we're on our deathbeds, we're gonna look back at our lives and be like, remember that night in Edinburgh where we stayed up till like 4 in the morning? When our cast went to Edinburgh, we were staying right above the little dog statue.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Greyfriars Bobby.
Greyfriars Bobby. Yeah. And for listeners who are not huge Edinburgh Fringe nerds, Greyfriars Bobby is this famous story in Edinburgh where correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but someone died, he left his dog behind, and then the dog kept revisiting his grave.
And you have to stroke him, or don't you stroke him?
His
nose, yeah, and you get good luck.
It's good luck, yeah. We loved that, being sleeping right above that area was very fun for us. Eight of us in I think a 4-bedroom flat.
Oh my God!
And behind that flat is the graveyard where Tom Riddle's grave, Voldemort himself's grave, is. And so we would stay up until 4 in the morning. Just the first time I went with an all-American cast. We did Voldemort parody, Hogwarts musical parody, and then the second time I went, it was just my friend Eric Michaud, and everybody else was British. And so I have just 2 amazing memories of staying up to the middle of the night being like, should we go into the graveyard and should we scare ourselves, and then getting too scared to even leave the house and be like, no, we can't do it. And one night Eric showed us the bootleg of Carrie the Musical, and we all sat down and watched it.
There you go. It's like the circle of life.
Truly.
Incredible.
Holly, what were your slumber parties like?
Oh my God! So
if you had them,
I was a nightmare. So
your name was.
Dare you? I was a nightmare. I'd basically go on a slumber party, and it would get to 11:01. I'd be like, no, I need to go home. I need my mum, and I'd keep booking them in. So I'd keep my social calendar going, and I'm like, yeah, I'll definitely come round. Yeah, I'm definitely coming to your slumber party, and like honestly, it was like like when the Drag Race finale, when a finalist comes on, they're wearing an enormous box. They're like, no, I don't have another dress under here. No. I was like that. I was like, no, I'm definitely staying through the night. I'm definitely not going to call my mum and need to go home. Yeah. 11:01. I'd be like, mum, come and get me. This shit is awful. So like, I didn't like go through the night at a slumber party for years until like I did go to one when I was like, I don't know, the last stage of primary school into going into secondary school, and I stayed through the night. And honestly, I came back to my parents like Elvis on the comeback special. Like, I did it. I went through the night. So, who do you think you are? It's just being somewhere else to be asleep. What's wrong with you?
What do you think it was? Why do you think? Was it the comfortability of the sleeping situation, or was it
the quality
anxiety?
was too low.
Yeah.
Hardcore abandonment issues, but like my mum was like, fuck off, go, I don't want you here. And my dad, I mean, it wasn't a Margaret White situation at all. She was like, can you please just give me a night off? This is a lot.
She would say that too. I've met her mum, and she would indeed say that.
Give me a night off. I have hardcore abandonment issues as well, and I have never been abandoned by anyone.
Where are
literally
ever
from? I don't know.
Carrie,
yeah.
There we go.
We're Carrie. Yeah. We're worried that that's going to happen to us.
Yes.
We've taken in too much media, and we're just like, one day I'm gonna get tricked, and they're gonna say prom queen, but it's they have me sleeping here. I'm their friend, but in the middle of the night, pig's blood all over my head.
I see it. I know it. Yeah.
So we call them sleepovers. They're sleepovers here, right, Holly?
Yeah.
Oh, sleepovers.
Yeah.
Slumber party isn't a thing.
You need to get a new jingle because, like, you need a British
truly
edition.
We call them sleepover as well, but slumber party I think is like the cutesy. I think it was maybe coined by like Mary-Kate and Ashley in like the early 90s as like
icons.
Oh, true icon. Have you guys watched WandaVision?
Oh yeah.
Not all of it.
Okay. We won't get too deep into it, but there's something so fun about looking at Elizabeth Olsen's face and having like nostalgia for her face because she reminds you of the Olsen twins.
Yeah. And isn't she great? Like
so good.
She basically plays like 15 roles in that show. She needs to get awards because she's brilliant in
and different styles, and like give Catherine Hahn every award that's ever, not just for this, for everything she's ever done. I mean, that woman.
The Agatha song, it's just unbelievable. Like, what is it about that song that is just in everybody's heads? It's like, you know, that time when they put U2 on everybody's iPod without asking. It's like they've put that song into everybody's brain, and like everyone knows it. It's iconic.
I feel like Catherine Hahn would make a great Margaret White.
Oh my good Lord.
Oh my God.
Somebody make it happen.
Can she, how
she sings. She sings.
I don't know if she could sing that score, but I bet she could make it really slay. I would love a movie musical version of the show.
Wow.
I would really like that. I think that could be really, really great.
Like Riverdale, a little bit like Riverdale, but
I never saw that. But I'm guessing no, not like that.
Chris, will you let me play Carrie?
Sure.
That was so enthusiastic.
For 15 years, he has slapped me down every time.
Especially on screen, it could start being problematic because
I think it'll be fine.
People have very high definition TVs these days.
I would love to see a Bat Boy movie musical.
Oh my God, I would love. I heard a rumor once they were making one, but this was like 15 years ago, so I guess it didn't happen. But that would be amazing. And especially like, I think set in like, you know, Trump, small town America, like, oh my God, it would have been perfect in like the Trump era to have a Bat Boy movie.
That
Oh
could
my
be a
God.
real
Perfect.
gag. I mean,
Mm.
if there's an audience for a Reefer Madness movie musical, which there is,
Yes.
there's an audience for a Bat Boy and a Carrie movie musical.
Definitely.
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
Somewhere a producer's listening to this and is like,
Yeah.
we just
Yeah.
we just lit a fire
gotta
under
be,
their
like,
asses.
Yeah,
I know. We
fine.
need to be like consultants or something on the Bat
Yeah,
Boy or the
seriously.
Carrie movie.
Definitely.
Yeah, we need to get on that.
Definitely.
Seriously. We have to wrap up for this section, but
No.
we're going to be over on the Patreon doing our segment called Wait, Let's Have Fun, where we're going to play some Slumber Party games. Before we go, where can the people follow you? Where can they find you on socials? Holly?
Oh wow. Okay, so I'm gonna plug Big Diva Energy, which is
You
my
must.
other podcast, which I co-host with avec my husband. He doesn't speak much in it, don't worry. Basically we spotlight a different diva every week, and we deep dive into their lives and their work and their cultural relevance. And our last couple of episodes with Peaches Christ on Divine, and that's kind of where we're at. And you can find that on wherever you get your pods. And yeah, probably the easiest thing, I'm at Morgs to You on Twitter, and you can see what I'm up to from there.
It's very good. I listen to
you
it
must
every
listen
week.
to you must listen to Big Diva Energy. I just discovered it this past week and I'm obsessed. The Peaches Christ episode is so good, and I love that your husband's on the pod. It reminds me of like when you show Drag Race to somebody for the first time who's never seen it. He's so adorable. The message he gave at the top about like I messed up about drag queen makeup and I'm so sorry. I was like, this is the sweetest, most pure thing in the world.
I'm
It's so
glad
great.
you like it. He produces Out for Blood as well, so he's
Oh
like,
my god.
yeah, he'll be thrilled to hear that. Thank you.
He's killing it. Chris, where can the people find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Chris A, but Out for Blood you can find at Out for Blood Pod on Twitter and Out for Blood Podcast on Instagram, because we like to keep things different.
Keep it
But,
moving.
yeah, and you can download it in all the usual places.
Yes, and please do. I'm telling you all, it's really so fun.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're gonna leave you here, but we'll see the rest of you on Patreon for a little for a little Carrie themed Mary F kill.
Oh my god, I have loved every second of
wait.
this.
I'm so
Thanks,
sorry
everybody.
to Bye.
Bye.